Welcome to the First Global podcast. For today's episode of Special STEM Leaders, we have Alex Animashaun, engineer, entrepreneur, and inventor. He is the creator of the sturdy bike company, Tuck Bike, a company that reinvented the wheel. His trips from London to Nairobi inspired his epiphany for his bike after he noticed that all the compactable bikes there had small, low-functioning, almost humorous folding wheels. As a result, he set out to create a foldable bike that had high-functioning wheels for urban commuters who didn't have much storage space. So that's exactly what he did. For today's episode, we'll be discussing Alex's invention process, how COVID-19 has impacted his experience, and what he's looking forward to. Stay tuned to hear some advice that Alex has for young students who are also pursuing a career in STEM. Alex, welcome to the First Global podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, so starting off with the first question, I wanted to talk to you about your process for inventing the Tuck Bike. What inspired you to create it?
Yes. So I was living in Kenya, and I was working at a car startup there. And I'm from London, and I'd gone back to London to see friends and family for a little holiday. And sometimes when you go away from a place and then you have time away and you come back, you see things fresh and anew that you hadn't seen before. So yeah, I came back to London. I saw lots of little folding bikes whizzing around, and I thought, oh, these bikes kind of look ridiculous with the small wheels. And sometimes you have tall people on bikes with small wheels. I thought, this looks kind of ridiculous. Can you not just fold a bike, have a regular bike and fold it? And so I started sketching on that, and pretty soon I worked out, you can't. There's sort of no other way to fold the bicycle. You fold the frame however you like, but you'll still end up with the wheel, which is indivisible. It's atomic. You can only fold the bike as small as the wheel goes. Therefore, if you want to have a small folding bike, you have to do small wheels. But then I thought, what if you could fold the wheels? Because then that's the rate limiter. So that's how I came up with the first idea. And then I guess I've spent, 4 years whittling away at the idea. If at first you don't succeed, try again. So I think I had my sort of first rideable bike like 4 years ago with a folding wheel. Didn't have any brakes on it. You had to sort of put your foot onto the tire to brake the bike. But the wheel did fold. And that wheel folded like a book folding in half. Well, it was actually thirds, but it had hinges. So it folded. If the wheel's in this plane, it would fold like that. So I had sort of that first thing, and it was incredibly heavy, and but it folded. And then I basically just spent loads of time redesigning, creating new prototypes, and eventually I totally changed the structure of the wheel, and I totally changed how the wheel folded as well from the first prototype. Yeah, so that's the sort of discovery process.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of trial and error and experimenting with what might work better in the future. And you kind of described it a little bit over a period of time, but can you describe a little bit further what your day-to-day might look like as both an inventor and entrepreneur?
Sure. inventing is trial and error. It's like, I think Nikola Tesla was a guy who said, I do all the thinking in my head and then I just do it. But I think for most people who invent, they sort of make a thing, try it, and then, redo it. And it's all trial and error, just, again and again and again. So the inventing part is definitely the most fun part. That's the most fun. When I'm sort of designing stuff, building stuff, trying it. When it works, it's great. And when it doesn't work, it's, depending on sort of what deadline I've set myself, sometimes that's crushing. And sometimes you're like, oh, it's okay. I'll just build another one. That didn't work, I'll design another one. So the inventing's the most fun part. I'm a solo, I'm a solo founder. I'm doing this on my own with a lot of help from friends. My background's in engineering, but I guess depending on your temperament, the fun part about the entrepreneurial side is to figure out all the other stuff, sales, marketing, accounting, finance, any kind of regulatory stuff, any kind of sort of admin stuff on, sort of setting up bank accounts and business licenses and and setting up LLCs. So the day-to-day work, it goes in sort of phases. Sometimes I'll be in an inventing phase and I need to create stuff and solve problems. Sometimes I'll be, I'll go like, weeks without having to solve a problem or a technical problem. And I'll be, trying to find a manufacturer or sourcing some parts or, working on what the sort of the launch video is going to be, writing the script for the Kickstarter video.
Yeah. You mentioned briefly a little bit about your background education in engineering. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. So I'm from the UK, and I always wanted to be an inventor when I was a kid. But then I got a little bit older, I was a bigger kid, and I was like, there aren't any jobs as inventors. So I've got to go do something else. So I became an engineer, but I sort of now realize that no one gives you a job as an inventor. You have to hire yourself to do that. Unless you're extremely lucky. So I studied, so it's actually a kind of longer story. I wanted to be a physical therapist. Sort of when I was 17, 18, I thought, right, I'm going to be a physical therapist. And I went and did a work placement in a hospital, or a work shadowing in a hospital. And I basically, my dream was to go and work at Arsenal Football Club and be their like physical therapist there, because that was the football team I supported, or I do support. And I went to this hospital and I saw the physical therapists were helping people with strokes, like relearn how to use half their body, or people who'd had a hip replacement, grannies that had a hip replacement and they're like learning to walk again. And basically I thought, me wanting to just go and work with elite athletes, I thought that's a bit shallow. That's like the people who really need your help are the people who've, just had like life-changing surgery. So I thought, I like very last minute, I had to change what I wanted to do. And I think my mum found this, it might have been my mum, found like a sports engineering course. And I like went along and went to their like open day. And so I ended up studying that. So the sports engineering was basically mechanical engineering, but the examples are in sports, be it bicycles or tennis rackets or something like that. And then there was a lot of material science in it. So it was really enjoyable. But on a practical sense, I think I might have chosen to study just straight mechanical engineering because I spent the rest of my career explaining what sports engineering is.
Yeah. So when you talk about like wanting to be an inventor from a young age. I remember you talked a little bit about this in my class as well. Do you have any like childhood experiences or stories from when you remember like thinking, oh, I want to be an inventor?
Oh yeah, like yeah, it was. I mean, if anyone played with Legos, it's all about creating. So I'd say, anyone who enjoyed making a new thing in Legos, there was some inventing flame there that could have been fanned. Yeah, like a story told at my wedding by my best man this is a guy I've known since I was 4 years old. He said, like one of the first times he remembered coming around to my house, I showed him like this. I'd made like a spring-loaded gun because that's what like, I don't know, boys in the sort of like 80s and 90s sort of were doing, was like doing like making little guns that fired little ink cartridges. And he said, like, I showed him it and I fired it. It like hit the wall and then bounced back and hit me in the face, or like malfunctioned or something like that. So I used to love James Bond, and in James Bond there's Q, and who makes all James Bond's gadgets. And I was like always trying to make gadgets. I had this like watch that I'd like taken like my Transformers sort of like rocket firing thing, and then I put it in like underneath the watch strap. So it was a watch, but then you could press a button and then a little projectile would basically fire basically like the length of your hand. It was quite pathetic, but it was fun. Yeah. And I think I made the sort of gun. I mean, why was I making guns? Let's teach kids something better. But that was like made out of like ice lolly sticks and like a matchbox and sellotape and a spring and ink cartridges. If of like fountain pens, if you ever remember those. Yeah, that's like some of the stuff I made. Or I remember watching Little Rascals, which is like, it was a film about like children doing a soapbox derby. And I remember like cobbling together a sort of equivalent soapbox thing that was terrible and like rusty, but it was made out of like a broom handle. You could steer it. It had like a broom handle and then like nailed in wheels from like a shopping trolley or something like that, a sort of shopping cart. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I was making. And yeah. And I do remember another time my mum had like an old vacuum cleaner and like secretly dismantling it in the garage when I was like 8. And I remember like taking all the like housing off and then like plugging it in, and it's just like this raw motor just whizzing around. And I was like, I could really get in trouble if mum finds that I'm like playing with live electricity. I was like 8 years old or something. Yeah. So those are my happy memories of doing that.
I love that. That sounds like so much fun. And the gun's definitely a sign of the times, I would say.
Yeah.
And a lot of early experience of trial and error, even at a young age. Yeah. So I also wanted to ask you, I mean, through your stories, I can already hear how much fun you have when coming up with these like cool gadgets. But what is your favorite part about your job, either, and maybe both, on the inventing side and then on the entrepreneur side as well?
Yeah, it's, hands down, it's the inventing thing. Like, I guess, my aim really is to sort of make enough money that my wife doesn't make me get a proper job. That's the aim of the game. Definitely the inventing side. Like, there's highs and lows with that, but to create something that no one else has ever created in the world before, there's like 7 billion people, like, thousands of years of documented history. To be able to create something that no one else has ever made before is like really cool. That's great. It's like the problem solving with a creative solution. I guess most people from a young age like doing that. And if you watch children play, it's remarkable how they solve problems just for fun. It's just fun for them. That's like, they're like building something and it's fun. And then as we grow up, we sort of, I don't know, get it conditioned out of us to sort of play to create stuff. On the business side, yeah, I'd say like coming up with some of the fun advertising videos or scripts, that's really fun, because it's kind of like you're making art, but it's art to sell something. I don't think I'm ever going to do sort of conventional, boring adverts. And if you like have watched some of the videos, like some of them have a little bit of humor in them or something going on in them. Like I think there was one of my videos, like I had a guy basically go on a skate park and go up some ramps and do stuff like that, and then I spliced into the video the folded bike, which has casters so you can roll it while it's folded, and I was like rolling it up the ramp and like doing rad tricks with it, but it's like folded. So I thought it was funny. I'm not sure it came out that funny, but there we go.
Yeah, I read also on your website that letter that you have about introducing yourself and getting inspired when you were, I think it said Kenya and Nairobi.
Yes.
And it just goes to show, I think, like the humor and creativity that you put into everything that you are doing. Now I wanted to move into a little bit about how COVID, which is what everyone is always talking about for the past year and a half or so, but how has COVID affected your business and product development with the tuck bike maybe, or anything else?
Yes. Yeah, this has been really difficult. The main thing is I have manufacturing partners in Asia. And there was basically, first, because of COVID, everyone was locked up for a while, and then nobody wanted to use public transport or be in close proximity to anyone. So there's just been a huge bike boom, like just massive. Like if anyone, if you know anyone who's been trying to get a bike, like bike shops are sold out of bikes. So you'd think this would be amazing for me, but what it has meant is that every bike company has jacked up their orders and are just trying to make as many bikes as possible to meet this new demand, which means that the factories worldwide, not just in Asia, the ones in sort of the US as well, are just absolutely slammed. So the factories are basically like, most of them have been like, look, cool product, would love to, but I'm not taking on any new customers at all, because I can't even satisfy my current customers because they've doubled their orders. I don't have space in my factory for new. So that has been the biggest challenge. And that was a point where at the turn of the year where I was like, the manufacturing partners that were talking to me pre-COVID were like, no, can't work with you anymore. So I was like really scuppered. I was like, I can find different places to make the wheel, but if I can't find someone to make the bike frame, I'm just totally stuck. So that was the biggest challenge. And eventually I did find a new manufacturer, but that was the biggest challenge. And, there's some well-known bike brands like Shimano. It's hard to make a bike without Shimano parts, really. There's other sort of big bike brands that make parts. You can't sell the bike until you've got the frame, the forks, the wheels, the saddle, the handlebars, the pedals. If you're missing one part, like, you can't sell the bike. And some of the giant suppliers have gone from 30-day lead time to 365-day lead time. It's like nutty. So people are, so that's the biggest challenge. So I've had to be flexible on the parts I use. And then I've had to find a supplier. And then, you know, some of the suppliers I've been working with have been, have been slower because they've got so much, you know, interest and so many customers to deal with. Yeah, that's been the biggest challenge for sure.
Yeah, when you talk about there actually being a higher demand for bikes, I remember I was also trying to buy a bike at some point and checking out, even the bike shop in Claremont was sold out. And I was like, how is this even possible? I've never seen this before. And then, when you talk about how you're able to problem solve and end up finding manufacturers, how were you able to do that? I mean, because clearly you did figure it out, but
this is, I mean, this is the other part of being a solo founder. I'm not trying to brag here, but you need like a huge amount of resilience and determination and persistence. And I wouldn't have said that, oh, that's me. I'm like a never say die, da da da. I wouldn't have, said that's me, but I have just persisted and kept trying. I sort of had some people advise me who were like, maybe you got to wait a year. Maybe maybe you can't do this right now. And I didn't listen to them and I persisted. So there's some tools like you can outsource, well, not outsource. There are like, procurement agents in different countries that can help you find a factory to make your product. And that's like one of the ways I was able to do this.
So in terms of this whole thing, like going along with this theme of like problem solving, that comes along with anything. If you're interested in inventing, you like find an issue and then look to problem solving it. What are you looking forward to problem solving in the future?
I guess I'm looking forward to the time where I'm like, oh no, I've sold like 100,000 bikes. How do I deliver these, or something like that? Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to having that kind of headache. There's like other technical things that I'm looking forward to doing, like reducing the weight of the bike. Like that's always going to be important for people. For anyone who's got a folding bike. Then, my first bike is single speed. Eventually I'll be adding a geared bike and an electric bike. So that'll be cool to see how I incorporate that. Those are the sort of, the technical challenges that I'm excited about. And then maybe there's another way to fold the wheel. At the moment, the way it folds is it's like a slice. It's like a pizza that's sliced into 3, and you sort of lift one slice up and rotate it around, and then you push the other slice down and it rotates around. But maybe there's another way to fold the wheel that could be faster or fold smaller. So I'm interested in that. I'm not done there. And maybe there's something else outside of bikes that I'd like to invent too.
Yeah, I noticed on your website that there were other projects that you've worked on in the past. I particularly remember the ring that you made for your wife. That was really cool to read about. Would you like to describe maybe one of your favorite other projects in the past, and what that process has looked like for you?
I guess like a sort of, like a recent thing was a friend had had like a serious thing happen, and then they had like part of they had their foot amputated, and then they were on crutches, and they were like, hey buddy, like every time I like lean my crutches on something, like if I go to like a bathroom, a restroom, a public restroom, whatever, I lean my crutches, then I got like to wash my hands or whatever, my crutches fall over, I'm on one leg, I've got to like bend down and like pick my crutches up. This is a nightmare. Can you like do anything to like, can you just help me like find a way to solve this? And yeah, I like basically found a way with with magnets to basically attach those to his crutches so that where's like, these are the two crutches. I found a way that you can basically use magnets so that the crutches hold like that, and then it's like two legs of a tripod, and then you can lean them up against, I don't know, maybe even with my phone, you can like lean them up against something like that, and it's like, it's stable. And then because it's magnets, you just pull it apart when you're ready. So yeah, that's like something. And then, you know, this is the thing with inventing. I looked up, I was like, oh, maybe there's some money to be made here. Maybe this is a better idea than my than the bike. And someone's already sort of patented something that uses magnets to hold crutches together. So that's a thing, like you can reinvent stuff that someone else has already solved but hasn't made it into a successful product before. So yeah, that's like something else that was fun.
That's really cool. I love how that your friend was like, oh, my buddy's an inventor. Let me just ask him to fix this problem for me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's not like he's like, hey, like my car doesn't fly. Could you solve that? I'm having this problem where my car doesn't fly.
Yeah, for sure. And then we're getting down to the last two questions now, but I wanted to ask you, what is the importance of STEM to you? And I know you talked about engineering and your background there, but potentially STEM as a whole in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Yeah, I think a lot of kids maybe at some point, I don't know, if you're not like top of the class in like maths or science, you think you're no good at it. And that's a problem, because how many people have we lost that had like ideas to contribute to the society and the world, that it's just, they were in a class of really good people at maths. There was I don't know if it was Malcolm Gladwell, but I think he wrote something where he compared, there's people who go to some top universities in America, they enter with like very high math scores on SATs. Then because they're surrounded by people who are not just very high, but like incredibly high at maths or whatever it is, they drop out. They're told, oh, this isn't for you. When actually, if you look at sort of less prestigious universities, there are people who had sort of less maths ability that went on to do, like, you know, write a lot of papers in the field of maths and contribute to them. So I think that's one thing about STEM, but I'm not sure if that is your question. It's super important to be like, you know, mathematically literate and to know the sciences. Like, I just go around all the time and I'm like, I get fascinated by, like, you know, sometimes I'll be looking at like my tea, and I drink a lot of tea, and I have this milk that is really fatty milk that has like chunks of cream in it. And then on the surface of my milk, I'll see like the fat melt and then basically sit as basically droplets on the top of my tea. And I'm always fascinated by things like that, to like understand what's happening. So science is a great way to understand more of what is happening with the world around you.
Yeah, definitely agree to that. And I think you started getting into it a little bit by answering the previous question, but do you have any advice that you'd like to share with young students who are interested in pursuing a career in STEM?
Yeah, I guess I was kind of getting into it. Yeah, your peer group can really go two ways. Like, if you're in a crowd of people who are, you know, your friends are all like really keen to learn and study and like go to college or whatever, then that can, like, depending on your background, like lift you up. And at the same time, like I went to like a very good secondary school, but when I went, or which is kind of like middle school to you guys, so at like 11, I went to a different school, but they had all been in like sort of, most of the other kids had been in like sort of pushed further in their education. So at 11, they had been taught more than I had. And so I sort of had like years like catching up to like get to the same level as those kids. And in those years, I kind of had like a world view of like, I thought I was smart, but I'm not smart actually. I'm like struggling to keep up with these other kids. And then eventually I did catch up. And then when I went to university, I was like, oh, maybe I am smart. Like, yeah, I'm like sort of in this group of people, I'm like, I don't know, I'm like getting grades at the top of the class. So I would say to like beware that what your peer group is doing. So on the one hand, it could lift you up, which is great. And on the other hand, if you're in a peer group and you're like, oh, I'm no good at maths, or I'm no good at physics, like, well, hold up, like sometimes some of the kids are getting extra tutoring outside of class, or like maybe their parents help them with their homework, or, you know, maybe they went to a different school. So there's those things. So if you enjoy it, then persist with it. And for like, what, you know, before the age of like 18 or 19, or pre-college, you can learn so much from books or the internet to get you to like higher levels in any of the sciences without needing a tutor. And also there is a thing of like, you know, when you're not doing as well in class as other people, you stop enjoying it, or a lot of people stop enjoying it. So I don't know if someone, you know, I don't know how to sort of phrase it, but I think it would be useful for kids to like know more of what jobs are actually like, what you could do if you learn French, or if you learn like, you know, physics or math, that like what you could do, and like that's the sort of carrot to carry on learning it.
Yeah, definitely. There's plenty of evidence to show also that like a lot of young women are discouraged from continuing in STEM because maybe they don't get as much encouragement from teachers, or like initially are actually getting, you know, they're like really good at STEM, but then they're also really good at humanities and get more encouragement there, whatever it is. But yeah, I just super agree with your advice that like if it is something that you're interested in, to like persist, regardless of what your surroundings might seem to tell you to do.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, and also like on a very practical sense, like technically skilled jobs often get paid more. So like that's another reason like to go and learn this. And you know, earning more money makes your life easier.
Yeah, for sure. People are always talking about how, you know, STEM and especially like computer science, I guess, is our future. And even people who are pursuing a degree in humanities, having a little bit of those skills is still really useful.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, that wraps up all of my questions that I have for you for right now. So thank you so much for agreeing to speak with me and for agreeing to be a part of this series. And I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.
Alex, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspirational story about being an entrepreneur and inventor. Thank you all for tuning in, and make sure to continue listening to this podcast by subscribing. Let's discover and recover.